Hi, everyone. So this morning, David Hacker took a selfie with you all, and I am so excited to be here today. I've got to do one too. So if everyone could smile. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we are all here today to take a stand for life, and I hope you all took a stand for life by marching yesterday too. I know I was there with my three youngest children, including a 3-week-old. We took a lot of snack breaks. So when we're talking about your rights in the community, we're talking about sidewalk counseling, picketing, parades, leafleting, counter-protests, and more. Generally, you have a right to be on a public sidewalk for counseling or protesting. Sidewalks are traditional public fora protected by the First Amendment, and generally, people are permitted to carry signs, talk to other individuals in public, and distribute literature to interested individuals on a public sidewalk. But the key thing to remember here is that this is an area that is so defined by local law. So we strongly encourage you to research your local law, make a list of local laws, and just make sure you stay current. But there are some things that you need to know no matter what state you're in. On sidewalk counseling. As we all know, sidewalk counseling is engaging in one-on-one communications and distribution of literature outside abortion clinics to abortion-vulnerable women and anyone else entering the abortion facility. Sidewalk counselors are typically there to talk to people who are considering an abortion, to give them information and resources and offer prayer and alternatives. Now, the First Amendment protects your ability to speak to these women and anyone outside the abortion clinic. It is very difficult for the government to restrict speech in these areas because they are, as I said, traditional public fora. And last year, this was affirmed again by the U.S. Supreme Court in McClellan v. Coakley, which held that Massachusetts could not maintain a statewide buffer zone outside of abortion clinics because it restricted the free speech of peaceful sidewalk counselors. But here, especially, you've got to know your local laws. You need to know the trespassing laws. Trespassing is any physical intrusion on the property. It can involve even cutting across the land, and it could even include anything that you have that goes onto the property. So if the wind picks up your sign and blows it on the property, that's a real area of concern. Do your best to keep control of your signs, your leaflets, and make sure you don't go on the property for any reason. Don't expect them to forgive your trespasses, right? Thank you. Residential picketing laws, you've got to be aware of those. Noise ordinances, buffer or bubble zone, whether it's a fixed or a moving bubble zone, that would be around a moving object like a car or a person. You need to be aware of those restricting your movement and your and any activity outside of the abortion clinic or health care facilities. And also assault, harassment, and disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct laws. So again, keep a reference sheet of these laws in your sidewalk counseling supplies. You need to also be aware of libel and slander laws. It doesn't usually come up in the sidewalk counseling context, but still be aware of those. In short, it's basically talking about defamation. When we're talking about the libel and the slander, you have to put yourself in their shoes to ask whether that would be defamatory. But in general, truth is a defense. So you're generally fairly safe there, but you definitely need to be aware of it. Federally, there is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE Act. This federal law prohibits a person by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injuring, intimidating, or interfering with any person because they are obtaining or trying to obtain reproductive health services. So you can't interfere with someone trying to go into the clinic. That includes intimidation, physical obstruction, any type of interference. So don't block someone's access, don't bar the door, don't trespass, commit or threaten to commit any act of violence. A lot of this is fairly straightforward, but it's very, very important to know because FACE violations can lead to jail time of up to a year or more, plus fines, and the person who is interfered with can also sue you as well. But FACE does exempt any expressive conduct, including peaceful picketing or other peaceful demonstration protected by the First Amendment. So if you're just engaging in peaceful expression, using not force, no threats of violence, no physical obstruction, then you are not violating FACE. You do need to be aware, though, that some states have their own FACE laws. So again, the refrain, check your local laws. Of course, know the physical limits of the area. Don't become confrontational when you're doing sidewalk counseling. When it comes to picketing, you can peacefully picket or demonstrate outside of a clinic, local, state government, etc., on public property. And the First Amendment does protect that activity. Just make sure that you remain on the public property when you're doing picketing, like on a public sidewalk. Don't obstruct the sidewalk, and make sure that pedestrians can pass. And check the local laws for noise ordinances. A lot of times there's restrictions on location, time, different things like that could trip you up if you aren't aware of it. For example, there might be some sort of ordinance saying that there's no amplified equipment, like no bullhorns before 7:30 in the morning. You're probably more aware of that in the lawnmower context, but it also applies here. Parades are a great idea. You can do a parade, organize a parade to raise awareness of life issues, and you generally need a permit for that from the locality that's organizing the parade. So if it's a city or a town or what have you. Generally, it's pretty easy to get the permit, but just check with your city or your town. Make sure that they're issuing them consistently, and make sure that they're not discriminating against a pro-life parade based on the pro-life viewpoint. For example, if they're issuing a parade permit to a pro-abortion group, but not to a pro-life group. When it comes to leafleting, you can pass out leaflets in your local community about abortion, life issues, local elections, abortion laws, anything like that. You can also leaflet outside of abortion facilities, abortion-related events, the government, and so on. You do need to check local ordinances again to make sure that there are no restrictions or what restrictions there are on residential leafleting. A lot of times there's prohibitions on leafleting at certain times of the day, different things like that. Make sure that the restrictions, again, are applied consistently and that they're not letting pro-abortion groups leaflet and not pro-life groups. And if you're leafleting on public property, which is very protected by the First Amendment, again, make sure that you're not obstructing pedestrians. If a pro-abortion group is having a protest or any kind of event, you absolutely can organize a counter-protest. But if the original protest has reserved an area, just make sure that you don't cross over into that. Just make sure that you have your counter-protest anywhere that the First Amendment activities are protected and where pedestrians are permitted, like on the public sidewalk. So many other activities you can engage in. There's sidewalk chalking, and so for things like Pro-Life Sidewalk Chalk Day, check your local ordinances. There's 40 Days for Life, volunteering at local pregnancy resource centers, so many different options of ways that you can get involved. So just to recap and give you a few tips, make sure that you follow the directions of police officers. Even if it seems like what they're telling you to do is violating your constitutional rights, even if it seems like it's not really adhering to the law, there's no need to violate an unconstitutional law and potentially face fines or jail time in order to challenge it. Don't touch anyone else for any reason. Don't yell. Generally, you have a right to be on a public sidewalk for counseling and protesting, but there may be time, place, and manner restrictions. Don't go onto the abortion facility's property for any reason, because that could be trespass. And make sure that you don't have your materials blowing onto the property. Contact law enforcement if you need it. To determine federal and state law and local ordinances, check online. Check with your city or town, and you can also check with law enforcement. Document everything, especially if something starts to go wrong, if you have a confrontation with a woman, with the abortionist or clinic staff, or with the police. Document, document, document. Remember, you do not need to violate the law or get arrested in order to challenge an ordinance or the law is unconstitutional. And be courageous. Be aware of, but don't be intimidated by the laws. If you encounter any issues when you're engaging in expressive activities, if you have questions before you do something, or if you get any pushback from the police, please feel free to contact Alliance Defending Freedom. Our booth is right out there, and we are online at alliancedefendingfreedom.org. Thanks so much.